that knows the knowledge, and he's going to share a lot of the history. So the history of the Colorado River is really kind of cool. So he's taking a different perspective and going to talk to you tonight.
All right.
James.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
Hello.
Oh, yay, James!
What's nice is during the presentation, with the wind moving the screen, we're all going to get seasick from looking at it tonight.
Woo.
So we'll have a shared adventure right there. All right. As Terry said, my name is James Hermes. I have had the pleasure of kayaking the Colorado River every November from Lake Mead to Mexico. And during this presentation, I will be omitting such controversial facts of the involvement of the history of Colorado River relating to ancient Egyptians, space aliens, and Doc Brown and Marty McFly with the flying DeLorean.
Oh.
Sorry for some of you. Anyway, as my trips, as I get to go down the Colorado River every year, I always think, you know, what's this place named? Why is the bend right over here? What's that ancient pictograph? What's this ruins over here? And each time I go through, I always look and do some research. I've spent whole evenings on Wikipedia researching. And through this discovery process, I'm able to discover why one place is named Topot Gorge. Why is this called El Dorado Canyon? Why is this one place called Norton's Landing? Because it's definitely not named after Edward Norton. And through this discovery process, I'm able to piece together some of the history over here and some of the history over here. And there's a self-serving reason I want to do the presentation tonight, is because that would force me to do more research and kind of correlate and relate the history of one part to another to give myself a bigger picture of the history of the Colorado River. I could go on all night. There's so many interesting things, but I'm going to give you largely the bullet points of the history and some of the major events. Some of you that know the history may disagree that I leave something out of this presentation, but you know, the whole idea is to get an idea of what involves with the river, what it used to be, and why it's like it is the way today.
Can you
also
adjust
adjust
the
that
light
light?
a little
Yes.
bit? It's like in my...
Let's go ahead and turn it down. What, Terry?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, can you turn the lights inward, Terry?
What?
The lights, turn them inward. Just kind of point it over here. One over, because I pointed out if you point it here.
Where you want it?
That's not
Point that one. There. Is that good? Okay.
Yeah,
let's
that's a
point
lot
that one the
better.
other way. And don't touch the floor. Is this good for everybody?
Yes.
All right.
Beautiful. Better.
Now I look like an intimidating silhouette.
Hey, that's not a problem.
Okay.
I'd rather see a silhouette than be blinded.
True enough. I will be
More
the
of a
mysterious.
silhouette than it was
I will be the
last year.
mysterious shaded figure talking with pretty pictures behind me, mostly in black and
Terry,
white.
put a
that's
mic
good.
stand behind it.
I'll hold it.
Okay. That means I have to talk for a really long time, so Terry gets tired. All right.
We're taking shifts.
Moving on. Colorado River itself. The names for the Colorado. Terry, what'd you do? Ah, good. Other names for the
behind it.
Colorado River, also named as the Vaqui, Aquemini, by the Pima, the Hawil by the Yuma, the Rio de Tezon by early Spanish explorers, and eventually renamed the Rio Colorado. Every name translates to the Red River. The reason the Colorado River is called the Red River originally is back pre-dam. The Colorado, what's up? You can hold it? Cool. The Colorado was described as a very wide, shallow, warm water river that was very silty. It was carrying all that silt from the Rockies and the Grand Canyon all the way down to Mexico. Very red, hence the Red River. This is a map of the Colorado River, historic drainage prior to 1903. It's hard to see on the map right there, but that covers, that's the upper and lower Colorado River Basin. This river is essentially pre-dam a beast. It drained an area over, let's see on the right there, it drained an area of over 240,000 square miles, ranging from south central Wyoming all the way to western New Mexico. And it drained all those rivers down into the Colorado. The main tributary of the Colorado River is the Green River. That's the one that starts in south central Wyoming. It's about 760 miles long. And finally, the confluence with it is in Canyonlands National Park in south central Utah. The other tributaries also, the White, the Yampa, the Gunnison, Eagle, Dolores, one of my favorite names right there is the Dirty Devil, as well as Escalante, San Juan, Paria, Little Colorado, the Virgin, Muddy, the Bill Williams, and the Gila are actually the only two rivers that that join the Colorado River below Black Canyon, which is Lake Mead, where Hoover Dam's at. The annual flow out of the Colorado River, when you combine all this huge drainage area, by the time it reached Mexico, was over estimated 18.5 million acre feet. That is a huge amount of water. This made the Colorado River the 5th biggest river in America.
Wow.
That is huge, considering that's impressive, considering that this is a river that starts high in the Rockies, goes through the desert. And it was nicknamed by biologists in the late 1800s the Nile River of America. It actually has a lot in common with the Nile River. Not going with the ancient Egyptians I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. But it would start high in the mountains and went through very arid deserts. And the mouth of the river, where we had the sea, supported a very huge delta. The Colorado River supported one of the largest desert estuaries in the world. It was also had the second highest tidal surge in the world. Everybody know what a tidal surge is? Kind of? Okay. Let's play on the next slide right here. This is a map of the delta. If you can see where it starts to narrow up at the top of Sea Cortez, that forms like a funnel, and as the tide goes up, it would create the tidal surge. That right there, that of course is a fairly recent satellite image of the delta there in Mexico. We don't have an old picture because there's none from space, because we didn't have satellites, and this will also omit the part of space aliens from the beginning of the presentation. Anyway, the delta covered, if you can imagine the delta pre-dam, cover a lot of that area green. It's so huge that it geographically stretched from the confluence of the Gila River. It covered over 6,000 square miles, the geographic area of the delta. And it geographically started at the confluence of the Gila River and went 100 miles south. Covered 6,000 square miles. The active delta itself was over 1 million acres. Well over 1 million acres. And the Colorado described to actually, when it started coming down and started meeting the delta region, would braid into like hundreds of different channels. It was hard for early explorers to realize where is the main channel of the Colorado River. See if there's anything over here I'm missing on the presentation. Nope, we got it all right there. So the delta plays a very important history with the Colorado. Tribes along there going from north to south were the Havasupai in Grand Canyon, the Wallapai, even though that's an H, it's spelled Wallapai in the Grand Canyon, and then we have the Paiute, Mojave, Chemehuevi, Quechan, and the Kokopah. During the rest of the presentation, I'll be mostly mentioning the Kokopah, Quechan, and the Mojave. So those are the tribes in the area in there. These are some historic images taken from the 19th century, of course the last half of the 19th century. Starting from the upper row from the left to the right, that's a Mojave girl. The middle right there is actually a Mojave dwelling. The warrior with the bow and arrow is actually, that is a Yuma. Down below that in the lower right-hand corner, some tribal members that's they're apparently waving at us. Those are a group of also Yuma. One picture, and this is one of the cute little, really cool little historical facts that aren't well known. In the lower left-hand corner, that's called the Lost City. Those are actually Anasazi ruins. A lot of you are familiar with the Anasazi probably think of a lot of Anasazi dwellings with being an ancient Puebloan culture, mostly active around the Four Corners area. You think of like Mesa Verde National Park with Anasazi ruins, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, Canyon de Chelly and the Navajo Reservation in Arizona. Not the Pueblo culture, Anasazi ruins actually stretch as far west as Overton, Nevada. That is actually only about 75 miles northeast of Las Vegas. And it's a real crossroads, because in the Lost City, and those aren't the actual Pueblos, that's actually a reconstruction built on the foundation right there. And that's where the upper Overton arm of Lake Mead is. There have actually been crops and archaeological digs, crops that were found like 1,000 years ago that were grown down by what's called the Peyton culture in Yuma, found up there around the Lost City. There has been baskets found with Mojave tribes, designs, styles found at the Lost City. It was a true crossroads of Mojave, lower Colorado River cultures and the Pueblo cultures, a true crossroads. If you ever have the chance to explore the Lost City, go for it. It is really neat. Next picture I want to show, and I'm native, so I kind of concentrate on the native aspect. Another cool picture here is we have, as a friend of mine, Mike Boss, told me when I was showing him some pictures of the presentation, from the left right there we have a, let's see, I think it's described as a Kokopah native, on the first version of the stand-up paddleboard.
Wow.
It wasn't called the stand-up paddleboard. That's actually a raft made of tule reeds. And there are tribes even all the way up in the Bay Area that would make canoes made from tule reeds. And it was we used a lot on the Colorado River. Middle picture is actually Yuma tribe. Other picture on the right with the lady at the basket is actually also Yuma. And this next image I like to show is actually, this is a Kokopah family. Kokopah's reservation south of Yuma. And just to make up your own minds, I like to read the description on this picture. This picture is from the 1890s. On the sun-drenched land, bordering the Alamo, scattered groups of Kokopah Indians. They lead an indolent and colorless existence. Their homes are miracles of flimsiness. A few branches of trees serve for the framework and dry brush used for the walls and roof. Not a friendly disposition, is it, for the author right there to describe the photo? Just something to think about. It's I like to throw out tidbits of that. For early European exploration, Terry, you good?
Good.
Okay. Early European exploration. Gotcha. You're getting seasick yet? Anybody getting seasick from the image? We're all good? All right. If you throw up, Terry's shoes are up on the stage. We'll form a line. Okay, the first sighting of the mouth of the Colorado River at the Delta was in 1539 by Francisco de Ulua, and I'm probably saying that wrong. And eventually you had, not too many years later, Fernando de Alarcon explored the Gulf of California as far upstream, about 280 miles upstream as far as Blythe.
Wow.
Yeah, he went quite a ways up. As well as, at the same time, there was a gentleman named Melchor Diaz, I'm going to just say good Diaz, traveled across overland, over the state of Sonora, all the way up to the mouth of the Colorado River and explored it up to the confluence with the Gila. What's neat here is these guys did it at the same time, and they were coming over meeting one Cortez, who traveled overland from the Pacific coast. And they were supposed to meet each other. They all missed each other because they were trying to do a great exploration for what was called Cibola. Anybody know what Cibola also means? Yep, city of gold, as I like to think. They were looking for gold. Gold. Austin Powers reference.
Yeah.
You know, something about the early Spanish explorers, they're always looking for gold. They're, they're so motivated by gold, for king and country, mostly for thyself. They're always looking for that glory. Neat little tidbit here. The Rio Hardy. How many of you are familiar with the geography south of Mexicali and Los Algodones down to the Sea of Cortez? You ever heard of the Rio Hardy? It got its nickname because in 1826, let me see here, 1826, a British Lieutenant Hardy sailed up in a small schooner called the Bruja and went up, and he thought he was going up the main channel of the Colorado River, which turned out to be actually an old channel of the Colorado River. He thought he was going up, and he's like, I'm going nowhere, and he discovered it's an old river channel, and so he had to drag his boat and go through sloughs and sand, what are they called? Sandbars to finally, over 20 miles, so he finally got to the main channel of the Colorado River. Mind you, it's hard to describe where's the main channel. And this river got the nickname Hardy's River, translated to Spanish, the Rio Hardy. What's interesting about the Colorado River pre-dam is that it would not always meet the Sea of Cortez. It's carrying all that sediment. And a lot of the geography, the soil, if you've been down Imperial Valley, you get that red clay. That's all soil from the Colorado River. And it actually built up, and the Sea of Cortez used to go up all the way up to what's called the Salton Sink in northern Imperial Valley, lower Coachella Valley near India, where I live.
Wow.
And it used to go up there, but the Colorado River sunk all that silt and built up and basically cut off the Sea of Cortez to where it's route now. All because the river just decided, I'm going to cut this off. It decided where an ocean goes a bit, a sea.
Wow.
And occasionally it would decide to, as the spring floods would come down, because high water was always about May to July, where all you got snow melt from all that big area, would send all that water down. And it would decide, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go this way. And so occasionally we create big lakes, what's called ancient Lake Pleasant in the Coachella Valley. Current Salton Sea, it's so far below sea level, it's actually 126 feet below sea level. One thing I forgot to mention from the first slide is that the Colorado River at high water it could be as much as 2 miles wide, and at extreme high water, it could be 10 miles wide, and the current can be 6 to 8 miles per hour. All of us are paddlers. We know how fast that is. That's a quick sprint for an Olympic paddler. It's 6 to 8 miles per hour. So a fun little part there about the Rio Hardy. I've established a lot of the geography and the character of the river. Moving on with what's called the Yuma War. This is where the establishment of Fort Yuma started in 1850. A lot of you familiar with the Yuma, the geography of Yuma, or been down there, Yuma Crossing? Okay, so you know a bit about it. The Colorado River would run wide in the Colorado River Valley south of Parker, and actually a bit wide south of Bullhead and by Laughlin. And there was what's called the Yuma Crossing of 2 concrete hill slabs, or granite, not concrete, granite hills that would push the river into a predictable channel. The currents were tricky, but it made a predictable crossing. A lot of tribes would farm near there. It's got a lot of history dating back 2,000 years. And the lower branch of the Immigrant Trail in the late 1840s, 1850s, mind you, that's California Gold Rush, made a predictable crossing, and that's where they typically crossed. And there was, in 1850, where the immigrants are going across the river, you have a group of Texicans, some bad hombres, that like to come over and raid the immigrant trains. And they also went down and raid a Cocopah village, a Yuma village. And the Yumas retaliated. They killed the Texicans, and they kept going. And they started doing war parties on the immigrant trains. So the government, U.S. government, sent a bunch of soldiers overland from San Diego all the way to Yuma. That's a heck of a trip through through one of the driest places on earth. Went over, established a camp, to protect the immigrants and also to fight the local tribes, to try to get them to get along. And it went on for about 3 years, consisted mostly of guerrilla warfare. From there, with the camp, there was a treaty made in 1853. And during that time was the establishment of Fort Yuma. This is one of the most important forts in the West, because it was a gateway, one, to Arizona, and the gateway to Southern California. And there was just so much going through there, so much traffic, so many different stories. One of my favorite movies is 3:10 to Yuma, the remake with Russell Crowe. If you haven't seen it, it's really awesome. During this time, Fort Yuma needed to be supplied when it was established. At first, it was supplied by mule train from San Diego. And if you know the route, if you follow I-8, the Interstate 8, that's the route they largely take. And they have to go through the Peninsula Range, the mountain range by eastern San Diego County, and then cross the desert a distance of about 150 miles through one of the driest places on earth. And they were doing it with pack train. It was hard on the people and a hell of a lot harder than the animals. It was deemed impractical to supply the fort. And so this great idea came to, look here, the great idea came to supply the fort by steamship. So this one steamship was disassembled. And if you think like Huck Finn, the steamships, the paddle wheelers, those went up and down the Colorado River. There's a heck of a history there. And it's hard to imagine the Colorado with steamships going up and down. But it was there. There were a lot of rivers that had that. The first steamship was hauled down, disassembled, I believe, in San Francisco or San Diego, hauled down by schooner, down the Pacific coast, around the tip of Baja California, up to Sea Cortez, reassembled a few miles from the Delta at a place that eventually got the name Robinson's Landing. And this great ship that was assembled, the first steamship to go up the Colorado River, to go 120 miles north in 1852, was called the Uncle Sam. This was a 65-foot long, 50 horsepower ship that could haul 35 tons of cargo. It was very underpowered for the current, but it chugged along. It took 15 days to get all the way up to Fort Yuma, and it delivered that cargo. You know, 35 tons sounds like a lot, but when you guys with water, food, supply for the animals, feed, everything, it ain't a lot.
Is that a paddle wheel?
That is a paddle wheel. That is a model of the Uncle Sam.
Wow.
It was not a particularly powerful ship.
And would that make it up to Ringbolt Rapids?
No, Ringbolt Rapids is actually much further north. This would actually go up and it would follow the river up to Yuma. It would go as far as the Yuma. Ringbolt Rapids is about 300 miles north, almost. So I'll touch on Ringbolt. That's a neat story. So it'd go up there, it unloaded the supplies, it went down back to the Sea of Cortez to grab more supplies from the schooner. And I love the part about the steamships. There's some really cool stories here. It would go down and it would come back up, and it was finally, after doing its route so many times, it was able to refine the time to 12 days from the Delta up to Fort Mojave. Eventually, about 1853, it finally ran aground somewhere and actually sank, which left an opportunity for somebody else to come along and take over delivering supplies up to Fort Yuma. Unfortunately, that time it did. For a short time, it went back to mule train, and that was deemed really impractical. So that gave an opportunity for a gentleman named, let's see, James Hermes was the first captain. In 1854, a name named George Johnson, eventually got the term Captain George Johnson because he got to captain his own boat, got awarded the contract to supply supplies over to Fort Yuma. So as he did this, he had a steamship disassembled over in San Francisco, shipped down the Pacific coast around Baja, California, up the Sea of Cortez, reassembled, and this was called the General Jessup. General Jessup was much better suited for Colorado River. It had a 30-inch draw, 104 feet long, 70 horsepower motor. I believe it was a stern paddle wheeler, not a side wheeler like the Uncle Sam. And he actually charged the government about $75 a ton. He would gross $4,000 per trip with supplies he did. Adjusted for inflation, the dude was doing dang good. So as he did this, he had enough supplies, and actually the schooners, they didn't unload in Mexico, because if they unload in Mexico, they'd actually have to pay customs to Mexico. So they always did it by ship, and there's such a backlog of supplies, and for the General Jessup to run it, is that he brought in a second steamer called the Colorado, about the same specifications as the General Jessup. And so they're going over and they're running supplies up to Fort Yuma. When they finally balanced out, Johnson's thinking, I need to expand my business. There's got to be other stuff north of here. I should be able to do other routes. And he thought, I'm going to explore up there, and I'm going to have the government pay for it. So hence, and it's hard to see down here in the corner probably, he put out a feeler, and Congress approved $70,000 for a scientific and mostly military expedition to see what the northernmost navigable point on the lower Colorado River is. So he's excited to hear this, that Congress approved it, but Congress asked for bids. When they did that, Johnson was offered a steamship, the General Jessup, to do this. He's already got experience. It's already plied the Colorado River. It's already in Yuma. But the Secretary of War, one Jefferson Davis, that Jefferson Davis, everybody recognize the name? Eventually the President of the Confederacy. That Jefferson Davis went out and looked for bids, and eventually the contract went to a relative. That should probably sound familiar a little bit right there. Went to a relative, one gentleman named Ives. What was his name on here? Joseph Ives, a lieutenant. Ives, in his young arrogance and pompousness, decided, I will ply this river, and I will do it with the great ship of my picking, because I know better. And he had the ship built in Pennsylvania, shipped down the Atlantic coast, going down, went across Panama, up the Sea of Cortez, reassembled to this overwhelming ship called the Explorer. The Explorer was a, let's see, what's it say on here, about 55 foot? 54 feet long. Don't know how powerful the engine was, but on the front of the Explorer was a howitzer. On the back of the Explorer was a cabin, and in the middle was a big boiler. The local tribes, when they saw it, called it the Chiquita boat. The artist for the expedition of the Explorer described it as a waterborne wheelbarrow. It was not impressive. And so this thing was assembled, and on December 31st, let me look here, make sure I'm still on the right slide. Ives, on December 31st, 1857, had a big celebration. Woo! Yay! We're going to go explore the Colorado River. We're off on our great exploration. And off he went, leaving the mouth of the Colorado River at the Delta, heading up. And on the same day, at the same time, Johnson took the General Jessup and had a big celebration. Says, we're going to go on this great mission of discovery, and headed north on the Colorado River on the same day. All I can figure is the record is that one didn't know the other was leaving at the same time. Ives definitely didn't know Johnson was leaving, and Johnson he did this exploration on his own, out of his own pocket. All I can figure is when he wasn't given the contract, he just thought to himself, well, I'm gonna do it my way. Little Frank Sinatra there, thank you. So up he went. And the General Jessup actually made it up about 40 miles up the Colorado River. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide here. Yep, okay. General Jessup made it. Go back here. Okay, so he went up north. He traveled, and he actually made it as far as Pyramid Canyon. Pyramid Canyon is currently covered by Lake Mojave, by Davis Dam north of Laughlin. The Jessup made it far, saw the rapids, which aren't particularly huge. Saw the rapids in Pyramid Canyon, right above where currently Davis Dam is at, and he was running low on supplies. And so he thought, I can't go any further north. I don't have the wood, I don't have the supplies here, so he decided this is the northernmost navigable point, and he turned his head down. Now mind you, what is going south and what is going north? Eventually they meet.
Oh no.
So after about a week, the General Jessup and the explorer meet. And the record is, the word is from the meeting, is the two captains were amicable to each other. Needless to say, Ives, when he reached Fort Yuma and found out that the General Jessup with Johnson had already gone well ahead of them, was not happy about it. But there was some supplies exchanged, some information between the crews, and off they went. And the explorer, as underpowered as it was, actually made it further, 40 more miles more than the General Jessup. He made it as far north as El Dorado Canyon, and when he started getting to the mouth of Black Canyon, you can imagine here's the explorer going against that strong current of the Colorado River, going chug, 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 boom! The boat stops suddenly as it reaches the mouth of Black Canyon. And then all of a sudden everybody's tossed forward. Supplies are tossed forward. The boiler is tossed forward off the base.
No.
Ruined the boat, and well, probably in some good naturedness, that it hit a big rock, and Ives called it Explorer Rock and declared that the northernmost navigable point on the Colorado River. I'm sure there was other words there to describe the rock. It's actually possible to see the rock. If it's clear, you can see it underwater. It's covered by about probably 20 feet of Lake Mojave now. But I've actually got a kayak and leaned over with, goggles on and went, there's Explorer Rock. So it's still visible. From there, in the official reports that I said, he describes Explorer Rock as the northernmost navigable point. Missing from Ives' official report was the meeting with the General Jessup and Johnson. So he conveniently left that out. Sound like the Spanish explorers? Some big egos involved here. Other notable events from the steamship era was, let's go here. Other notable events was 1862. There was placer gold found over La Paz,
Wow.
which is where currently Parker is, the town of Parker. And so to set off a mini gold rush, and there's actually a series of mini gold rushes that were set off. And you had towns all the way up to El Dorado Canyon. El Dorado Canyon at one point was one of the big, if not the biggest, city in southern Nevada. And how many of you are familiar with Lake Mojave? El Dorado Canyon, it's the end of the Black Canyon Water Trail, there's nothing there. There's actually a town underneath that water. And at one point there was a railroad that went down there. But because it's in a big flash flood area, a lot of it gets missing. But more steamships need to be supplied. Need to supply these towns and these other places like Fort Mojave that got established. That was like another version of the Yuma War, where you had the Mojave War, and Fort Mojave's established over by Needles. So the General Jessup and the Colorado could not supply these forts. That made it ripe for more competition. So you had more steamships that were brought in. Let's see here, 1862. More cargo backlog. In 1866, the steamship Esmeralda, and as you mentioned, Ringbolt Rapids, the Esmeralda was actually made it further than the Explorer in Black Canyon. As they were going up, they actually hit got up to Ringbolt Rapids. Ringbolt Rapids, if you're familiar with that, it's near Arizona Hot Springs and Black Canyon, probably 5 miles down from Hoover Dam. It was said to be the last major rapids on the Colorado River. And the Esmeralda was able to get over it by sinking a ring bolt into the Arizona side of the river and used a pulley system to get up and over the rapids. It was a hell of a feat. And in the next slide, I'll actually have a picture of the ring bolt. It's a heck of a thing. I mean, those guys were, the men were men. It was incredible what they did. But they got over the Ringbolt Rapids and actually made it as far north as Cavell Bay. Currently where Cavell Bay is in Lake Mead. That's impressive to get up there. It's near they've made it near the mouth of the Virgin River. That's always been like the goal for the steamships, to make it that far to be able to try to deliver supplies up to the Mormon settlements that were out there at the time. Unfortunately, the ego involved with trying to make it all the way up, making all the Cavell Bay, when the Esmeralda made it back down to Yuma, the guy was broke doing it, and the sheriff actually like confiscated the steamship when he reached Fort Yuma, and it was taken by the creditors. The guy was pretty destitute after that, but he got his place in history. In 1879, the railroad finally reached Yuma, and by then you don't have to haul boats you don't have to go by schooners down around the tip of Baja California and up the Sea of Cortez. They didn't have to do that, so that began the beginning of the end of the steamship era on the Colorado River. And as other railroads would come into like Needles, that kind of chipped away at the freight business. There's still freight, worth it, but it wasn't not near as lucrative. I'm going to show a few other pictures here. The steamship era pretty much ended in 1905 with the construction of Laguna Dam. The upper left-hand picture is actually with that's the first bridge, or one of the first bridges, I think the first bridge, railroad bridge definitely, over the Colorado River, and that is the first crossing of a railroad over the lower Colorado River at the Yuma crossing. Other picture right here, to the upper side, right side here, that is actually the Colorado River above Hoover Dam. That's pre-Hoover. That's now Lake Mead, so that's what the river used to look like at that point. What's hard to see over here in the lower left-hand corner, that's actually a steamship unloading at Castle Dome. Castle Dome is actually just a little bit below Fisher's Landing, where it's currently at today. Lower right-hand photo, that is actually the confluence of the Gila and Colorado River. Today, it does not look like that. It's actually largely farmland, a bit of slough, and it's a party spot for the locals. I like to stop there and just take in the history, and then look at all the trash from the people that were there probably the night before. It's a party spot. It's not what it used to be, definitely. Matter of fact, if you ever look at a map and see the Gila actually runs dry over here by Phoenix. It peters out, and all the raw water that comes in from the channel, the river channel for the Gila River, consists entirely of farm runoff now. Some other, next slide I like to show, these are actually relics of the steamship era from that time, from 1856 up to 1905.
Who's that man?
I don't know. That looks like Bob. Are you here, Bob? Where are you at, Bob? Here, Bob. It's hard to see here, but the upper left-hand corner is actually some of the ruins from the mine processing equipment in the town of Picacho, which is now Picacho State Recreation Area, California, and surrounded on 3 sides by Imperial Natural Wildlife Refuge. Other pictures, no miner's cabin on the Arizona side. That's Bob Anthony right there. It's hard to see over here because it's kind of condensed, but that is the ring bolt that was sunk in by the Esmeralda above Ringbolt Rapids. I'm told it's still there. There's evidence of it. I've looked for it. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I've had friends that swear as little as 2 years ago they found the ring bolt.
What year was that you took that picture of Bob?
Yeah, geez, Bob, how old are you?
1890 what?
Well, I didn't take the picture.
You're doing great, man.
But that was the first recorded selfie. Hi, Bob. I took the picture. That was Bob back in 2016 with me, when he and I and Terry paddled the river. Lower lower right hand is actually called Norton's Landing. Norton's Landing is the last steamship stop along the Colorado River that exists. Everything's been changed, or it's not near the Colorado River anymore because it's been channelized, so the river changes course over time. It's the last one you can see. You can see the remnants of the docks. It's also a mining camp, but you can it's the only one along the Colorado River you can explore at all anymore. In the lower left-hand corner, kind of a depressing fun fact is that's Bill Williams National Wildlife Refuge. I included that because it's the last significant stand of cottonwood trees left on the lower Colorado River. The Colorado River had a lot of, in the open areas, had a lot of riparian habitat that consisted of mesquite and cottonwoods. The cottonwoods could reach 120 feet tall. They were pretty mature. But because of the steamships, one reason that, like the General Jessup in the Colorado only took 2 or 3 days to get up from the delta up to Fort Yuma is because every 20-30 miles, basically about a day's travel between stops, because the steamships wouldn't run overnight because they couldn't navigate the sandbars at night, there would be a supply depot of wood to run the boilers. And what's the only thing to cut around that whole area? Mesquite and cottonwoods. So a lot of it disappeared from the lower Colorado River. Also with the dams, that cut off a lot of the silt from the Colorado River that would supply the riparian habitat. And a lot of it got washed away. And I'll touch more about that here in a couple slides. So I like to include that because it's a relic, really, in one way to look at it, and it's sad. Wheeler Survey I like to touch on. That's kind of a personal favorite of mine. The Wheeler Survey took place at the same time as like Powell's expedition. It was a series of expeditions to document and survey big parts of the West. And the Wheeler expedition actually started around Fort Mojave, and they went north on the Colorado River and actually went as far north as Diamond Creek in the Grand Canyon. And some of the photos that he took are outstanding. He had a gentleman named, let's see, what I remember his name here, Timothy O'Sullivan, very famous Western photographer. The photos he took were amazing. This is one of them. That's Black Canyon. I forget which part, but you can see the reflection of the water. And mind you, this is the early 1870s photo technology. This guy was incredible. This is my personal favorite. This is probably a couple miles south of present day, where it's called Arizona Hot Springs. You can actually see that same setup in the mountains. I couldn't find the photo, but I actually wanted to do a side-by-side with this photo. And I actually a few years ago, I was leading a group of Boy Scouts down through Black Canyon, and we stopped right at the same place. You can see the same layout, the same mountains, except the Colorado River stretches up because it's artificially high these days because of the dams. Reclamation Development. This is where things really start changing. The first dam on the Colorado River built was Laguna Dam in what do we got here? Completed in 1905. Rockville diversion. It's still there. You can still see it. That was pretty much, like I said, killed the steamships because they couldn't go all the way down to Fort Yuma. They were pretty much cut off, and they just got more from there. Next dam that was built was the big one, the Hoover Dam, 1936. That was the major game changer for the ecology of the Colorado River. Next one built, the next one was Parker Dam, 1938, forms Lake Havasu. Of course, Hoover Dam forms Lake Mead, biggest reservoir in the United States. Definitely one of the largest in the world. 1941, Headgate Rock Dam. Here's one of those historical tidbits I like to put out. Headgate Rock Dam was built to raise the water level of the Colorado. Because you didn't have the silt coming down, the water going through started washing away what silt was there and actually dropped the riverbed down about an average of 5 to 8 feet.
Wow.
So you didn't have that anymore, and so the water wasn't able to reach the canals at the time in that part of the Colorado River Indian Reservation. So Headgate Rock Dam was built to artificially raise the level and actually became technically a lake with a slow-moving current called, what we have on here, Lake Muvela. We'll call it Muvela. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Another part is south of there. The canals at the time was considered a wasteland, that part of the reservation. There's also a Japanese internment camp there during World War II. And the people that were the people interned there were actually made to dig irrigation canals, and because of those irrigation canals, farmland was able to develop, and that's how the farmland there became. I don't mean to throw in depressing facts, it's just part of the history on there. It's not well known. I've talked to a lot of people that didn't know that, and I learned about it myself about 5 months ago reading through, and I just think it's something interesting to put in there. It's part of that buried history. So even World War II, the Japanese internment camps, helped change the ecology of the river in the whole area. Next dam, we have Morelos. I hate that dam. Davis Dam, Morelos was after treaty in 1944 between the U.S. and Mexico for water rights. Morelos Dam was completed in 1950, solely designed to divert water from the Colorado River over to farms around Mexicali, and actually these days drinking water as far as Tijuana. Other dams finished. Davis Dam. Davis Dam forms Lake Mojave. It was formed largely just to control, to re-regulate flow from Hoover Dam to hold for Mexico. Actually, interesting enough that Mexico, a lot of their water they have for reservoir is held, and to this day is considered being held in Lake Mead. And what they need, that extra flow sent down, and eventually that much water is diverted over to Mexico at Morelos Dam. A lot of times when I describe like my Bow South expedition, the charity paddle I do down from Lake Mead to Mexico, I always say we paddle the whole lower river until it abruptly stops at Morelos. The Colorado River pretty much runs dry for about 50 miles after Morelos Dam until the Rio Hardy comes in and meets the Colorado River channel, and then it picks back up. Okay, we got next dam that came in, Imperial Dam, was built in 1938. That retains the water from the Colorado River, and that feeds the All-American Canal. All-American Canal, completed about the same time, is the largest desert irrigation canal in the world. If you've ever driven out the 8 and you see this big, long canal right there that's actually bigger than the Colorado River is, at the time that it, bigger than the Colorado River, definitely exponentially south of Imperial Dam, it actually is an average flow of 26,000 cubic feet per second through there. So it's a lot of it's going over, and it's actually diverted to farms over in Imperial Valley and some canals that make it as far as Coachella Valley. Last dam right here is Palo Verde Diversion Dam. I call that my nemesis because I hate portaging that thing. But Palo Verde Dam is built solely to divert water for the Palo Verde Water Authority or Water District for farms in the Palo Verde Valley, north and south of Blythe, California. And that is the last dam that was created there. After all that was done to the Colorado River, stopping the sediment, the dams completely changed the ecology. The Colorado River, being, as I described, used to be wide, warm water, very silty. Especially with the completion of Hoover Dam, became a clear, cold river. You had fish that were evolved over millennia for that silty water that was warm, and all of a sudden fish apocalypse happened. It changed the flora and the fauna, and right now you find a lot of salt cedar, arrowweed along the shoreline. The Colorado River has one of the few rivers in the world that has a almost completely introduced fish, fauna, fauna, fish species, being cold fish species. Anything that's left over are basically relics of the past. Some of the endangered fish that were endemic to the lower Colorado River are pretty much raised in fish hatcheries and let go in the river just to keep it there. The river resembles almost nothing what it used to be, and that's the fact. You can hate it, but at the same time, there's a reason why we're here, and there's a Phoenix and there's an LA. There's the development at the same time, and there's a price. It's just the way the history is. Colorado River was also largely straightened. It used to wander around like this. It was straightened by the Bureau of Reclamation in the mid to late 1960s, especially around Blythe and south of Needles. It was very much straightened. The last place you can see the Colorado River, largely as it used to look, is actually Imperial National Wildlife Refuge. You got a 36-mile section where it widens out again, still clear, but it's the only place you can truly see what the Colorado River used to be like. This is the current map, lower basin of the Colorado River, with current impoundments, canals, and diversions. It's hard to see right there, but you've got the Central Arizona project, which actually feeds Lake Pleasant right here. There's a fair amount of Colorado River water right here, and it actually goes all the way down to Tucson, Arizona. Interestingly enough, from the pump station Lake Havasu, where the Arizona project starts, it's further from, that canal goes further from there to Tucson than the Colorado River takes to get to the Sea of Cortez. And none of the rivers actually meet almost none of the rivers meet the Colorado River anymore. As I said, Gila River runs dry, and like the Salt and the Verde all run into, eventually all run into the Gila. The only rivers that technically meet the lower Colorado River anymore below Hoover Dam is the Bill Williams, and that's impounded by a dam that forms Lake Alamo, some miles that way, and the Gila, and that only consists of farm runoff. It's something. But you can see the area that also supports with the what's called the Colorado River Aqueduct from the pump station on the California side of Lake Havasu. Supplies all that drinking water over to LA. And a lot of the farmlands from All America, the water from the All America Canal is diverted for drinking water all the way into San Diego.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. This is from a South South expedition last November. It's one of the prettiest sunsets I've ever seen. The colors are real and its camera still didn't capture it. So, with everything, the Colorado River doesn't meet the Sea Cortez consistently anymore. It's only done it twice in the last 30 years. Once during a major El Nino year in 1998, and then what's called a pulse flow in correct me here, 2014 was it? Was the pulse flow? Okay, 2014. There's hopes of another pulse flow from what's called the original pulse flow was called Minute 319, international agreement between Mexico and the U.S. Water was purchased from farmers, and well over 1 million acre feet, over 1 million gallons, 2 million gallons, a lot of water was released to simulate a spring flood down to the delta, try to revitalize the delta. The research is still being conducted, but the benefits to the delta were almost immediate. There's another pulse flow with Minute 322 that was signed last August, I believe. If there's excess water in a very wet year, then there will be another pulse flow done down to the Sea Cortez from Morelos Dam. And we're hoping that there's a lot of hope that maybe in 2019 there will be another pulse flow. Because I've got a couple friends, and dude, you better be in on this. I got some friends that want to ride that sucker down. A couple other facts: people do source to sea from typically the headwaters of the Green River down Sea Cortez. Less than 50 people have done it. I had the great pleasure of being able to help one person named Brian, I forget his last name, last December, as well as a person named Carrie Fife, who went all the way down to the Sea Cortez. Carrie made it all the way. She did. Oh, Carrie's cool. You got to meet her. And so, huh?
You didn't even have to do Palo Verde.
She paddled through Palo Verde Dam because the gates were open. She got the red carpet.
Wow.
We hate Palo Verde Dam. So Carrie Fife went down there, and there's a group of us because I've had the chance to paddle the lower Colorado River a few times. You don't mind if I say your name?
Sure.
Okay. Jason Horton right here is actually stand-up paddleboarded the Colorado River all the way from Hoover Dam to Mexico. And Carrie Fife, we've been talking, and if there's a pulse flow next year, we're going to ride that sucker, and we're going to ride that pulse flow and follow the Colorado River where it meets the Sea Cortez. And with that, we'll be adding our own little chapter to the very distinguished and outstanding and just incredible history of the lower Colorado River. And that's my presentation. Thank you. Thank you. You guys Q&A right now?
Yeah.
Any questions?
We'll start out. James, what's the canal that broke that caused the Salton Sea?
That's one of those things I omitted. That was actually a canal near Laguna Dam. It was I forget what you call those things, a dike right there that actually broke. It was totally mismanaged, broke open, and all that water's draining out. It lasted for about 2 years, and almost the entire flow of the Colorado River, and mind you, this is pre-dam, this is about 1906 time period, went down to the Great Salton Sea, formed what we know as the Salton Sea today. And that's a really cool history there too, because it was there were actually rapids and went the Colorado River formed an old river channel called the Alamo, and people would actually drive all the way, come down all the way from LA to look at the rapids right there. And the only way it was actually the river was the dike was resealed after a couple years, as the railroads had to build a line and constantly haul rocks to come in and just keep dumping. They got washed away, but they kept dumping more rocks until finally they were able to redo the dike, and the whole river was able to go back to a original river channel. Any other Q&A? Any other questions? That it? Okay, that's what we got.
Thanks.
Thank you, awesome.
All right.
Great history.
Thank you, ma'am.